Well, hello everyone. I just found out that Owen Wilson got shot down over Bosnia, and he got saved by, of all people, Gene Hackman and that other guy from Officer and a Gentleman. Finally, something to be thankful for this holiday. I had no idea. We totally dodged a bullet there. So I changed my camera straps this morning, and for those of you out there who are like me, who are terrified of changing camera straps, I actually felt pretty good about myself. Normally, when I have to change a camera strap and I have to work with those little tiny triangular or circular discs that you have to separate with a fingernail and then slide it in there, I start dreading it the night before because I'm really bad at it. I thought I would share my new camera bag with you. Here it is. This is what I would call a plumber's bag. So you show up with this thing, and then you unzip it, and then you pull it apart like this, and the person goes, "What are you here to fix the toilet?" And you go, "No, actually, I'm here to photograph you." And so I changed these straps. I put these little lightweight leather straps on here, which I really like. And then I took the good strap, and I put it on the XT4 with the long lens because I had been using a strap that is so bad and so insulting and so awful. Even non-photographers would just look at you in disgust and be like, "Jesus, buddy, get it together, get a decent strap." So that's where we're at. It's post-Christmas. It's been all I'll say is I'm not going to share the details because it would be a total bummer for people. But one of the strangest holiday seasons I've ever had. I'll just leave it at that. Not good. Not in a good way. So I'm fine, and my wife is fine. Most of my friends and family are fine. But anyway, it was a weird time, and I'm glad it's over. And now I want to talk a little bit about books. We've talked a little bit about books on this channel, but there's a lot to discuss when it comes to books. The photo book is a unique thing, and I have made, for your listening and viewing pleasure, I've made a 14-point list of some of the things that I think you got to keep in mind when you're going to make a book. And for everybody out there, make a book. You don't have to make a book with a publisher and get famous and try to sell copies to people you don't know and spend 12 to 18 months of your life and get sucked into that cycle. No, I'm just talking about something small, something inexpensive, something informal, because the benefits of making a book are going to so far outweigh not making a book that I don't even know where to begin. It's one of the singular most important things you can possibly do as a photographer. And when I say book, you can make a magazine, you can make a trade book. It doesn't matter the trim size, it doesn't matter the paper, it doesn't matter the materials. None of that matters. It's about encompassing in your head what you have actually done. What do you have? What do you not have? How do you edit? How do you sequence? How do you choose all those materials, and why would you choose them? And what's your price point, and what's your trim size, and who's your audience, and all those things that a book forces you to get your head around. But there's a lot of stuff that we got to talk about, and some of it is not pretty, and some of it is. So again, this is the giving season, apparently. I thought Christmas was about who got the most. That's what it was in my family. And then turning around and giving the fake 6 guns to the person who got just a little bit less than you. That was what happened in my family every year. It could have been my 90-year-old grandmother giving me the 6 guns, but she would. So I am not normal. If you are wondering, I'm not. So I turned down so far in my life, and I don't think I will be getting any more of these, but I turned down 3 publishing deals in my lifetime. I turned down 2 in around 2007, and I turned down another one in about 2015. I turned them down for a variety of different reasons. There were multiple reasons why I should not have never been involved in any of these deals. And in 2007, I was almost dumb enough. I was on the dumb scale. My needle was constantly moving into dumb enough, not quite dumb enough, dumb enough, not quite dumb enough. And I was almost dumb enough to get involved in one of these deals. And at the last minute, I was like, that little devil on my shoulder was like, "Are you that stupid that you're going to do this?" And then I backed out. But I am an anomaly. Most of the people that I know that are approached by publishers to do book deals often get involved in those book deals. And we're going to talk a lot about this. But I knew in 1996, I was never going to do a book with a publisher. I was almost positive because I'm a weirdo and my goal in life is to disappear. not get involved in publishing deals. So again, you can't necessarily use me as your guiding light, but I think some of the data I have for you might be interesting. Okay, before I dive into the tough stuff, I know people personally, I actually know people in the town I'm sitting in right now who do publishing really well. There are multiple photo book publishers here in Santa Fe. You have Twin Palms, which is amazing, Jack Woody's publishing place. You have Radius Books, which is one of the best boutique photo book organizations, nonprofits I've seen anywhere. Their books are gorgeous. I've got a bunch of them on the shelves right here. In fact, I shouldn't say this. My camera tripod is sitting on one of their books right now. Don't tell them. They're never going to see this film, but don't tell them even if they did. I know people who do this well. I know photographers who work with the same publisher. I know someone in town here who's done 6 books with the same publisher. They get a tiny advance up front. They get the books they want, designed the way they want, in the trim size with the materials they want. They get it printed the way they want, and they sell through their run, which is typically between 1,500 and 3,000 books. These days, airing more towards the 1,500 than the 3,000. They sell through, and the process starts again. They have a great relationship with their publisher, and that's the way that it should be. But for every one of those people, I encounter thousands who end up in horrible situations, and that's what we're going to talk about. Point number 1, bookmaking should be fun. And for a lot of people, it's not. So someone's name came up in conversation a couple of weeks ago. There was discussion of having a little get-together outdoors because COVID is raging still. And this person's name came up, and the consensus was, don't want to invite them because they're so encompassed by their photography book project that they've been working on for a decade that no one wants to be around them, because inevitably they will show up at the get-together and they will do nothing but talk about themselves and this book project and drive everyone insane. That happens all the time. I can think in my head, I'm seeing faces, I'm seeing projects, I'm seeing books that I've encountered over the last decade where the photographer has just become so engrossed in getting this thing done that they have lost all context with the rest of the world. So don't do that. Bookmaking should be fun. Most of us are going to be making books that are not necessarily designed for public consumption. That should make the process exponentially more fun. Don't get stressed out. Angry bookmakers, unhappy bookmakers, pressured bookmakers do not make good books. And they also, as I mentioned, drive everyone around them crazy, and that's enough right there to stop the process. If you are pissed off, if you are angry, if you're entitled, if you think you're not as famous as you should be and you're going to make a book to prove everyone wrong, you are in for a long and rough road. Don't do it. Just back her up a little bit. Just slide that gear shift over and down, check your rear view, and just back her on up a little bit. Relax. Bookmaking should be fun. Point number 2, I already covered it, but we're going to cover it again. And I wrote it down, so in case I would forget it. If you are angry or feeling like you've been slighted or feeling like you should be famous and you're not, do not attempt to do a book. Miserable photographers make the people around them miserable too, and the damage will outweigh the gain. I just said that in a convoluted run-on sentence before that, but that's point number 2. Let me emphasize that again. If you are ticked off or angry, and now here's how this translates for my position in life, working for Blurb. And this has happened more times than I can count over the last decade, and I can see it coming from outer space. And it's not that big of a deal because I'm used to dealing with this, but this is what happens. Photographer goes out and tries to get publishing deal, tries every publisher they can. University presses, big publishers, small publishers, boutique, US, domestic publishers, foreign publishers, doesn't matter. They try and they can't get a publishing deal. They call me, and the first sentence out of their mouth is, well, I couldn't get a publishing deal, so I'm going to use Blurb, and this, quote, better work. Now, when I was younger and nicer, I would always try to be like I'd be the psychologist. I'd be like, sit on the couch, let me tell you about self-publishing. Now I don't do that. I just tell people right off the bat, stop what you're doing. Under no circumstances do you make a book like this, because if you're making a book out of anger, it's not going to work. And so just chill out, man. Chill out. I'm going to get to another stat in a minute that's going to make you kind of sick. You might be a little pukey in a minute. Okay, and here it comes. Point number 3. Books are for photo books. Let's just take illustrated books in general. Illustrated with a drop-down menu to photo book these are 1%er things. And to make matters worse, photo books are the 1% of the 1%. The vast majority of the people on this rock circling the universe, whatever it is we're doing. I slept through physics. I don't know what's happening out there in space. It's not good. It's cold, it's dark. It is kind of weightless though, I've heard, so that's kind of cool. Nobody cares. The vast majority of people on the planet, there's 600 million people who don't have enough food and water. Just think about that. You think they're going to care about your photo book? No. Do you think that the vast majority of people who have enough food and water are going to care about your photo book? No, they're not. They don't care about your photography, and they certainly don't care about your book. So photo books in particular, although wildly important for professional photographers if done well and used correctly, can be career changing. The vast majority of people on earth do not care, and they never will. What this is a favor to you. It's a favor to help you understand context, relevance, culture, society, reality. All those little words that get tossed around as if they're fairy dust, they're actually very important. No one's going to care. Vast majority of photo books I see being published today, there are exceptions. There are exceptions to every single thing I'm saying on here. Vast majority of books I see are published in the 1,500 book range. So best case scenario, you sell 1,500 books. That doesn't cover my neighborhood in Santa Fe, let alone the city of Santa Fe, the state of New Mexico, the United States, the world. We are talking a fraction of 1%. So when I see massive egos run amok when it comes to doing books, I just think to myself, those folks have completely lost context to what it is. Now again, inside that sliver of real professional industry photography, not online community, not the online or YouTube or Instagram photography world, I'm talking about the actual brick and mortar photography world, books are still critical. They are incredibly important. They are a calling card unlike anything else, and they are certainly far more important in my mind than how many Instagram followers you have. Because I've got some stats here again that's not pretty when it comes to that stuff. So photo books, 1% of the 1%. So if you think you're going to make an impact globally with a photo book, I've seen it happen, but it is incredibly rare. Point number 4, books are not easy. Books are slow, they're tedious, they demand revision, and they will cost you, which is exactly why you should be doing it. Let me repeat those things. Books are slow. We've all been taught now in the modern era, got to go fast. I need a YouTube film that's 30 seconds long, and then 6 months later, I need a YouTube film that's 15 seconds long. At some point in the future, I'm just going to say, I'm going to make a film, and then I don't have to make it because no one's going to pay attention anyway. It's going to be great. I can't wait for that day. Slow, tedious, demand revision, and will cost you. All the things that we've thought and been taught are bad are actually good and why you should make a book in the first place. It's slow. For crap's sake, slow down. Everybody's in the race, the gold rush to get famous in photography without actually maybe even having studied photography. And so the books come along and everyone's like, hey, I'm going to do a book and I'm going to sell tens of thousands of copies to people I don't know and I'm going to make all this money. That rarely ever happens. I've seen it happen. I know friends who've sold 6 figures worth of books. I know of people who apparently have sold 7 figures worth of books, but these were very intelligent and they were point number 5, which I'm going to get to in a minute. I'm going to explain how someone would be able to do that. But the reasons why we're taught books are not good are the reasons why they're good. It's the same exact thing for analog photography. The digital geeks in the late 90s, when digital arrived, you had this whole wave of just absolutely maddening, arrogant, awful, geeky photographers who all really were not good visionary photographers. Even though a lot of these folks were professionals and working and making a living, many of them were not good photographers. And they were the crowd that came along and said, film is dead, you can't use it, you shouldn't use it, you're going to go out of business, it's awful, it's done, it's over, you have to adapt to this new technology. And they were all idiots and they're all wrong and everyone kind of put up with them. Careers were built on the switch to digital. Companies loved it because they were trying to sell widgets, but behind the scenes, everyone would be like, that person's annoying and really not that good of a photographer. And by the way, I still like film. It doesn't have to work that way. Just relax, just chill. It's 1%, it's slow, it's tedious. People said analog photography, oh, you can't see your images, you're limited by 36 frames a roll, it costs the cost of processing. That's why film is great. Because you can't see it, and you are limited, and it costs you, and it actually makes you go, oh, there's something floating around in this thing. I think I'm having a bad heroin day. Something floating around in here, and I have to turn it on if I'm going to use film. And with digital, plumber's bag, I can just blast away. Point number 5. Is your book a story-driven book, or an artist-driven book? Let me repeat that. Story-driven book or artist-driven book? Big difference. Most people new to bookmaking, new to photography, especially those in the online world, boy, they just want artist books. Look how good I am. Look how great I am. Look at my photography. Guess what? They don't sell. They never have. Artist-driven books rarely sell, even by some of the biggest names in the world. If I could tell you, and I could use the names, I'm not gonna, because it's not cool if I did, some of the most famous photographers in history, their publishers have told me straight to my face, I cannot sell 3,000 copies of their book. I can't do it because nobody cares about that, besides other photographers. And yes, other photographers, we look at each other, we support each other, we buy each other's books, we invest in each other's careers if we can. And yes, there's an audience for Photobooks just inside the photo community, and that's where the artist book resides for the most part. Story-driven books, on the other hand, sell because the story-driven book is you telling me there's something you should know. And yes, my photography is a part of that, but the message, the story is what's critical. Those books sell, but they don't sell your ego. Artist-driven books often, and this is my experience and my opinion, are often driven by ego. They're often driven by insecurity of people saying, and look, I've been stuck in that. In 2007, when I got approached by 2 different publishers for the same project, yeah, at that point in my life, I was like, I think this is a really good body of work. I think this is a good story. I think this would be great. And it would be crazy for me to deny that there's ego involved and insecurity involved, because you're saying, look, if I get this book, then it proves something. It proves I've been chosen by a publisher. It proves that I got an imprint. Now, those deals were horrible and I said no, but that's sort of the underlying current behind it is, and this is a critical point. The traditional methods and paths in photography, whether that's photo editors, agents, art buyers, agencies, publishers, gallerists, they dominate the mindset of professional photographers. A lot of professional photographers are waiting to be told if they're good, how good they are, what they're worth, and what to do. That sounds crazy, but it's reality. A lot of people don't want to create their own ecosystem. They want to exist in the classic ecosystems like publishing, like galleries, like museums that have been around for a long time. And there is a relevance to those industries. Undeniably, there is a relevance, but it also requires you to dance in a certain way. And other photographers go, I don't want to dance in that way. And that was me. I said, first of all, I'm a horrible dancer. If any of you have seen me dance, it's bad. I mean, it's not just bad, it's really bad. It's embarrassing. I mean, it's one of those few times in life where I'm like speechless. I'm like, you get me near the dance floor and it doesn't matter how drunk everyone around me is, they will notice how bad I am. Coupled with the fact that my wife is an incredible dancer and she's the first one on the dance floor every time. As we're driving up to whatever event I know there's going to be dancing, I am pleading with her, please, whatever you do not be the first one on the dance floor, because inevitably everybody turns around and goes, well, who's she with? And they see Loserville here standing on the side in the dark, drinking as fast as possible, trying to get myself ready. And then, of course, everyone's like, dude, get out there. And then I have to go out there and they go, oh, don't get out there. Like, back off, get in the back, let someone else take over. Whoever, doesn't matter. The dance of the traditional models is both fascinating and horrifying, because a lot of really good people get sucked into these models and end up not being that good, because the models don't necessarily allow you to be who you are. The models are going to be driven by revenue and about ROI. And are we going to invest in this book because there's an ROI? Or is this an artist-driven book that we know is going to lose money but should be published anyway? And that's the dynamic that you have to work with. Point number 6. Most common book deal I see and hear about, and get ready, sit down. I don't know if you need a hot water bottle or you need some Vicks Vapor Rub on your chest, whatever, get ready for this. This is the most common book deal I see and hear about when it comes to publishing books traditionally. Now, there's a positive cap at the end of this, so relax. The most common book deal I see is artist, meaning photographer or artist, paying between $19,000, it's always 19, it's never 20, it's always like 19.5, because it sounds so much better than 20. Artist paying upfront between $19,000 and $50,000 to get a book deal. Let me repeat that. artist, me, publisher comes to me, Dan, we love you. We think this project is great. We should do this book. I just need $32,000 of yours up front. Now, you might be saying to yourself, that's the worst business deal I've ever seen. And it can be. And I've seen it implode time and time and time again. Most of the time, that money is not coming back to the photographer. That's a harsh reality of what we're talking about. It does not come back. In fact, I have publisher friends who have said to me, it is so disheartening and so painful to, number one, tell people they're never going to get a book deal, but two, to tell them they can when they know that this person assumes that that money might come back to them through book sales. And that is very, very unlikely. So oftentimes too, these book deals do not come with marketing and distribution. And those two things, even if you have your own ecosystem and you're going to do a book on your own, marketing and distribution, in my opinion, are two of the most difficult things to solve. Some people market really well, others do not. Others do not have time because they're working, they're in demand as photographers, and they may or may not have time to do that on their own marketing. And distribution is very difficult. And it can be expensive and laborious. And if books don't sell, oftentimes the photographer cannot get them back. The remaindered books will not be returned to the artist. Sometimes they're destroyed for tax purposes. And so I'm seeing people pay tens of thousands of dollars up front and often not getting marketing and distribution and really not even getting a book that they wanted, but still getting a book. And it's so uncomfortable to be in these conversations. I went to a party a couple of years ago. I'm bringing this up because it was at this time of year, pre-COVID. Go to a party. There's 3 people at the party who are in the middle of publishing deals. And I very innocently, I wasn't trying to put the screws to anyone. I just said, look, tell me a little bit about your deals. And they all got really squirrely. And one person said, look, I just blew, it was 30 or 40 grand. He said, look, I don't care. I have the money. I know I'm never going to see a penny back. Getting a publisher's imprint is all I care about, and I'll do anything to get it. And I was like, great, totally get that. The other 2 were like, they were going sideways. And I was like, what's up with the marketing? And they go, I don't know. And then after the first guy had admitted he was not getting any of his money back, the other 2 were like, man, I hope I get my money back. Like, I don't have that kind of money laying around. And they had upfronted this. They did not know about their marketing, did not know about distribution. They were unsure about the design. That is just so disheartening for me. It makes me feel so bad because all of us get so emotionally involved in our photography that it's so hard to spend all that time investing in the work and the editing and the sequencing and all of the things involved, and then to just watch it, to pay for it to go away in some weird sense. Not good. Point number 7, this one should be in all caps, and this is going to rub some people the wrong way. And I say this in public as often as I possibly can because it rubs people the wrong way. And frankly, we need to rub some people the wrong way because otherwise nothing is going to change. If you are paying a publisher to do your book, in my opinion, you, my friend, are self-publishing. You are self-publishing. Ouch. I can see the hackles on certain people getting up all over the world if they hear that, because being chosen by a publisher and then you're paying them $30,000, $40,000 to do your book, which actually becomes their book, you're self-publishing. You are. Get over it. I mean, that's just it's so crazy to me. I've been on a million book publishing panels over the last 10 years, which I love doing because there are some of the most talented people I've ever met in the creative industry, in the publishing space. The publishers themselves, the directors of these small publishing places, designers who are designing the books, they are incredibly talented. But to me, to say that you are paying a publisher to do your book and you don't consider that self-publishing, to me is just not, it's not truthful. You're paying. So, and again, I don't care because here's the thing. If you paid $40,000 and got a book and you printed 1,500 copies of that book and you lost 1,499 copies of that book, but you kept one, and that book ends up with the curator of the Museum of Modern Art, because again, when curators and gallerists are looking for new talent, oftentimes they may or may not buy a print from that artist first. They may buy the book as the entryway into beginning to collect that artist. A book is easier and less expensive to collect, plus it shows a range or a body of work. Whereas a single image print, now even people who have no background in photography are trying to sell prints and NFTs at just insane amounts of money. It's like a get-rich-quick scheme. So Somebody who's a curator may look at you as a young artist and say, I think this person really has potential. I want to get something of them. And they look at the print prices and they go, Jesus, I'm not going to spend $20,000 in the museum's money to get this, but I'll buy that book. And then that book ends up, or even if that book is gifted to them or given to them with a letter saying, look, I really love the museum, I love the collection, whatever. If that book ends up in there, another year rolls around and the curator is like, look, we need to go out and start collecting work from new young artists. And they see that someone sees the book and says, wow, well, this person's been in our office for a year with this book. Let's take another look at this. And they deep dive in and they go, you know what? Let's follow up to what they've been doing in the last year. And then they say, okay, now's the time. Now we're going to buy a print from this that's going to go in our new artist collection here at the museum. I've seen that happen over and over again. So if you lost 1,499 books, but the one book you kept ended up with the curator of whatever museum you want to pull, and all of a sudden that could lead to you being in the collection. And that's how careers begin to be built. That's how the foundation is. So just because someone blows 40 grand on a book and doesn't quite get what they want, it can still work out. Which is why when I run into somebody who's done that, who's happy, who's saying like, look, yeah, I can't sell these books, but I've been giving them to these people or whatever. Great. That's how it works. That's how these things can still work. Point number 7 was if you're paying a publisher to do a book, in my opinion, you're self-publishing. Self-publishing has a horrible connotation in photography and in publishing, and it's absurd because people were self-publishing before they were publishing, by the way, going all the way back to the beginning of the printing press. There were no publishers. There were individuals publishing, so get over yourself. Some of the most famous artists and authors in history have self-published. And so that, again, is ego and insecurity, saying that you must have some sort of affiliation within some sort of organization to put your work into the world. It's ridiculous. Maybe in 1960 that was the way that things had to be. It certainly isn't now. Point number 8, if you are going to get into a publishing cycle, those are typically 12 to 18 months. So if that's something that you feel you have the time and the commitment to do, just know that books don't happen quickly. It takes a lot of time, from the acquisitions editor to the design to the funding, marketing, distribution, all that. Takes a lot of time. These work in cycles, 12 to 18 months. From what I've seen and heard from dozens and dozens and dozens of other people who've done this, that's about normal. Point number 9, linen covers, foil stamp, printed end sheets, placeholder ribbon, medium weight paper. That covers 80% of all the photo books I see. 80% of us all want the same exact thing. Linen cover with foil stamp, printed end sheet, sometimes a placeholder ribbon, kind of cool, nice little touch. I've seen checkerboard head and foot bands, those are nice too, but not that common. And sort of mid-grade paper, good but not great, because price point. Those set of ingredients are still priced at a point where you can turn around and sell a book. 80% of all the photo books I see look exactly the same. It's those set of ingredients, and frankly, a lot of the photography looks the same. Because I think a lot of photographers are doing books that they've already seen done. Someone else did it, someone else had success, they copy it, they do it, they try to have the same success. It's like social media mentality, where it's like, I'm not going to do something crazy because then I might fall out of the following. The algorithm may penalize me for this, so I'm not going to do it. So the publishing algorithm is like, I've seen this before, it's very safe, and I see book after book after book after book like this, those set of ingredients. And then comes the books like World from My Front Porch, Larry Towell, Mark Edward Harris's Way of the Japanese Bath, Michael Greco's book on the adult entertainment industry, which I'm looking at here. These are totally different. You see them from a mile away and you go, oh my God, that is not your standard photo book. Now, going to be more expensive, but also is going to leave an impression, unlike some of these other books that all look exactly the same. I wonder if I put this in here. I want to say that, well, we're going to talk about ecosystem maybe here in a minute. Okay. That was point number 9, linen, foil, printed end sheet, ribbon, medium paperweight, 80% of the books I see. Number 10, and I don't even remember writing these down, and I did this yesterday. If you have a real, actual following, let's say 100,000 people on YouTube, you can produce, this is actually the point I was going to make. God, I'm so good at this. If you have a real, actual following, let's say 100,000 people on YouTube that you've culled, that aren't bots, that aren't trolls, they're actual people, you can produce a totally subpar book and sell it out. I see this all the time. I see people who have their own ecosystem, and most of the time that's on social, and this is where the subpar part comes in. I know other folks who have their own ecosystem that's based primarily through an email newsletter, who are also publishing books, their books tend to be very good, professionally designed. There's a purpose behind it. There's a great story behind it. Their ecosystem is legit, and they can sell through a book run on their own without dealing with anyone else, except for a printer. The online folks, if you have a good following, you can make a book that's crappy and sell through it. I've seen that happen over and over again, and frankly, more power to you. Because if you can convince your following that that's a good thing to have, and that gives you the funding to produce another book, great, do it. That is legit. I think YouTube is better than Instagram for selling books. As of 3 weeks ago, a month ago, there was a story of a famous artist who has 100 million followers on social media, published a book, big advance, sold 64,000 copies. To me, there is no better explanation of the facade of social media than that when it comes to selling books. Social can work wonders in other ways, but when it comes to selling books, I don't see Instagram as a super viable thing. Again, exceptions to the rule. I know people who have done it well, and I know thousands who have not, who have spent so much time and energy and really become phony people to try and play along to the algorithm and play along to this concept of building following, and it's embarrassing, and then they end up not selling anything. So YouTube actually, because YouTube is good for long form content. Heck, look at this film. I'm at 31 minutes. Someone out there, someone desperate. You're probably in a holding pen. You did something wrong. You're overnightting in local jail, county maybe. And you're like, I'm stuck, and they got YouTube on and you're watching me. That guy might actually make it through this film. But 31 minutes of information about book publishing, that's important because this is not a simple thing. There are so many layers to this, and each publishing project is completely unique. So YouTube, I think, is a great long-form content delivery mechanism for having people understand a project and a publishing project that you're doing. Instagram is not, because a second and a half of a thumb swipe is not enough to understand any of this. So if my advice, if you're going to commit to one of those or the other when it comes to selling a book, do YouTube. Point number 12 is before you begin going down the road of putting a book into the world, and I don't mean a single copy of a self-pub book that you would do, which is what I prefer to do and what I do most of the time is I just work on a project for however long. The one I'm working on now is 2 years and running. And I dream about this book all the time. I imagine spreads in my mind of how I'm going to combine these ingredients. But the end for me, the juice for me, is a single copy of a book. I don't need to show you. I don't need positive affirmation from people I don't know. I don't need to go to a party and act cool because I'm a photographer and I want to tell people I have a book. I don't need or want any of that. Again, my goal, disappear. I have this dream where I'm laying in like this medieval forest, or maybe like where Skywalker found Yoda. It kind of looks like that. It's dark and gloomy. Kind of looks a little bit like the Terminator, when the machines, the HKs, the hunter killers are crushing all the skulls, and Reese is in there with his little 40 millimeter plasma rifle and he's shooting back. Now, I look at that scene. I think a lot of people would look at that scene and say, wow, man, the future looks horrible. I look at it and say, that beats a desk job. Like, it doesn't look that bad to me. Living underground, no Excel spreadsheets I have to do. Give me the HKs. I'll take that plasma rifle. Why not? You have to ask yourself, does the world need your book? And again, not a little single one-off like I do, because it doesn't matter because the world's not going to see it and I'm not trying to get anything from you. But if you are in fact putting a book into the world and telling people it's important and you want their attention and their finance and their money and their fiscal support, does the world need the book? And I think a lot of you are going to be faced with an answer that's very hard to swallow, because most of the time the answer is going to be no. Now, those of you out there who are driven are going to tell me to go away and that you're going to do it anyway. And that's the tenacity you're going to need to go into the publishing world. So artist-driven books are harder, to answer. That question's hard to answer, because most of the time, does the world need another book of photography by a photographer just saying, look how good I am? No. But do we need stories? Absolutely. I mean, I can go down this list of books over here. Minamata, perfect example. Gene Smith's book, Minamata. Did the world need that? Absolutely. We're still dealing with the fallout of that. That's called a good book. That's a photographer who doesn't need to say, I'm really good, even though he probably did because he was a notoriously difficult human being. He's laying down the gauntlet with the work and saying, does the world know about this? Who's responsible? What's going to happen in the future? How do we fix that? That's a book the world needs. I got other books on this shelf that are ego-driven books only. I got some books on this shelf that I'm like, I can't believe this person did this, and I can't believe a publisher invested in this. That's just the reality of where we're at. So ask yourself, is this a book the world needs? And is this a book I've already seen and I'm doing because I'm copying someone else who had success? If you're doing that, stop and don't do it. It's embarrassing. Do something that's you. I don't need to see you as someone else. I need to see you as you, warts and all. I might like you, I might not like you, but at least I'm getting you. And we have gotten completely and entirely away from that in the social media era. It is the phoniest, I don't even know how to describe it. It's the phoniest community I have ever seen. You know I'm conning you and you're conning me and we both go along with it because it's about following. And I'm tired of it. I'm sick of it. I think 2022, if we don't hit the reset button, we missed out. The egg is on all of our faces. If we don't look at what's happening in the world and say we need a reset, now's the time. And part of that to me is jettisoning social media and the phoniness of living online. I think from someone who's worked in a marketing department for 10 years, about 5 years ago, you started to hear the word authentic pop up in almost every meeting. Authentic, authentic. Wonder why? It's because 99.9% of what was around us at the time in culture and society was fake. It was phony. It was because everyone was high on social. And everybody knew it was a con, and we all did it anyway. And so all of a sudden, there was a kickback. And thank God for like 14-year-olds who came along and said, I don't want to get conned anymore. Like the kids, I think, were the ones who really started this push towards authenticity because 14-year-olds are pretty smart and they know when they're being conned by people my age. And so they're like, look, give me something authentic. And then that word authentic took over. That was like the domineering word in the vernacular for the last 4 or 5 years because people are trying to find a way back to it. So maybe 2022, let's take my birthday, for example, January 1st. That's a good day to hit reset. Let's start over. Point number 13, always err on the weird side. In the words of Hunter S. Thompson, when the going gets weird, the weird turn pro. That's what we should do. If you are putting, whether it's a body of photographs, a written piece, a photo book, err on the weird. I would much prefer to swing for the fence and miss than bunt single. I'm not bunting. I hate bunting. One, I always take the ball on my knuckles. I don't bunt. I'm swinging for the fence. Chicks dig the long ball. That's what I'm going for, and I'm not left-handed, but I can bat left-handed if pressed. I'm not a switch hitter. I'm a righty. So err on the weird side because, man, how cool is it to walk into Photo Eye Books in Santa Fe, which is arguably the single best photo book store in America, and walk in and see something from across the room that you go, what is that? What is that? And you go over and you're like, I don't know what to think. Years ago when Blurb had their Photography Book Now contest, which ran for I think 4 years or 5 years, international competition, best panel of judges I've ever seen, did not have to enter a Blurb book to win. 1 year there was an Italian photographer, hopefully I'm not getting that wrong, Valerio Spadea, I think was his name. I saw 3,000 books laid out in the basement of ICP in New York. All the judges flew in from across the US and Europe and elsewhere to judge these books. And I was in the room as well, making pictures and sort of documenting the behind the scenes. And I looked over and I saw Valerio Spadea's book. And I took one look at it and I said, that's going to win. That is going to win. And sure enough, it won. And I think it was a $30,000 cash prize to win this, or $20,000, something like that. It was pretty great. And it was weird. It was like 3 books in one, and it was beautiful. And I was like, that is an object. That's not even a book. It's an object. That's a whole nother discussion. Number 14, and then I'm going to shut up, at least for now, until I do another film. You don't need much. A single copy of a single book that is yours is a very powerful thing, even if that book is never made publicly available. One of my all-time favorite Blurb books that I've done, there's 2 copies in existence. It's a book called Inertia, and it's a book of my photographs combined with my mom's poetry. My mom writes poetry, has for years, her sister does too, and that book is incredibly important to me. I think it's actually a beautiful book, and I think the poetry and the photography match well together. I think the design is good, it looks good. There's 2 copies in existence, and you will never see it. It doesn't matter. That book's important. Some of the best little art books I've done are editions of one. So I did an entire project with the idea in mind that there would never be more than a single copy of that book in existence. Those are some of my favorite books I've ever done, and most of you will never see those either. So you don't need to think about getting famous. You don't need to think about getting wealthy. You don't need all of that. Small is enough, whether it's a photo project, a written piece, an art piece of artwork, or a publication. Small is enough. You can make a publication for less than $3. That's really good. That's really cool. If the work is good and the thought is there and it's meaningful to you, that's all that matters. So that is Let's Talk Books. I think I've been rambling. Did I mention my plumber's bag? There it is. There it is. Oh, you geeks out there. So this is sort of my daily standard rig. Fuji X-T2 with a 0.95 Chinese 50 millimeter lens. I love this. It looks really good. In fact, I did sort of a pseudo-awful, non-specific, non-scientific test between the Sony with my Leica 50, the full-frame Sony with my Leica 50, and the Fuji non-full frame with this Chinese 50, and I was kind of surprised. I was amazed how good this looked. And I was like, oh. And so that's sort of my everyday thing that I carry around. It's kind of broken, this whole, you can hear that rattling? That's not supposed to rattle, but it still works. And then, this is the one I gave to my wife, but I took it back. And in the process of taking it back, I accidentally knocked a piece of pottery off her desk and shattered it into 1,000 pieces. I thought she was gonna shiv me. We were in her office and I had to take a defensive stance because I thought, okay, it's coming. She's gonna act like she's gonna bend down and pick it up and then she's gonna shiv me and it's all over. And she was like, oh, she was so mad. I had not seen her that mad in quite some time. And I had no excuse and no good explanation other than being sloppy and moving too fast. But this is the one that I gave her. And this has the little 23 mil, which is the 35 equivalent. I'm actually gonna buy a little inexpensive mechanical, manual focus lens for this only because this 23 is great. And if you're like filming and need autofocus, it's fantastic. I just like the old mechanical focus, the old manual focus and the feel of those lenses because I spent so many decades running around the planet with manual focus cameras of that size with lenses that I need to focus. And I like the look. And so I'm going to buy this thing. It's cheap. Don't worry. Don't send money. Forget about the Patreon page for now. My birthday is coming up. So if anyone's feeling generous, no, don't buy me anything. I don't need it. Anyway, that's it. That's my life in a nutshell, and I'll be back.